Come back. The Lord's calling you. Let's talk about it today. Now, I want it to be clear that I'm not saying this from a Ben perspective. I'm not saying this from a Rise Church perspective. I'm saying this from a God perspective. We're living in a time where many of us have been forced away from church. And along with that, we've been forced and made decisions to walk away from our relationship with Jesus. And the invitation is still there, and I want you to hear that. The invitation is always there. Come back. It's this crying out. I remember this very clear moment where my sister had been using drugs for a number of years. She had been living on the streets, and since then God has saved her and freed her from these addictions. But during this time, she was very bound up by it and stuck. And I remember she had come back for a short period of time to my dad's house and saying, I want help. I want to get better. Please help. And so I was there, and I was pouring into her, and she decided she was ready to go back to the streets. And I remember her walking away with her suitcase. And I remember as she's on the sidewalk and pulling her suitcase and walking away, I remember getting down on my knees and just saying, come back. And this is the invitation that God gives towards his people. In fact, he's done it time and time again. And as we walk through our devotions this week, we see exactly that. We see this calling to the wayward. And it's in 2 Chronicles chapter 24, where we see the kings of Israel and the people of Israel and of Judah that continue to turn their backs on God, continue to seek their own ways, continue to worship other idols and other gods. And there's this moment, it says in 2 Chronicles 24, verse 18, "And they abandoned the house of the Lord, the God of their fathers, and they served the Ashram and the other idols. And wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for the guilt of theirs. Yet he sent prophets among them to bring them back to the Lord, saying, 'Come back.' These testified against them, but they would not pay attention. Then the Spirit of God clothed Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and stood above the people and said to them, 'Thus says God, why do you break the commandments of the Lord so that you cannot prosper?'" Listen, if you're in this season and you've decided that you have walked away from the Lord, you've been trying something else, and now you're recognizing that it's not working, it's not prospering, well, it's because it's not the God way. It's not the God way all the way, and God continues to invite you back. We see this again as we go through the devotions this week in Joel chapter 2. He says, "Yet even now in the midst of our brokenness, even now in the midst of our waywardness, even now in the midst of trying to do things our own way and relying on our own self, yet even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping, with mourning, and rend your hearts and not your garments. Return to the Lord, for he is gracious and he is merciful. He's slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and he relents over disaster." Listen, God's continuing to call you back. I don't know who this is for, but if the shoe fits, put it on. God's calling you back. Let's continue. Let's come back. Let's come back. I love you. Have a great week.